Oh, sorry. Okay. Welcome back, everyone. I'm Carrie Moore.
And I'm Lisa Callahan. And again, obviously, we're already laughing. See, you guys, we start talking before we start recording. And so we get to giggling before we even start this pod. And yet, here we are. We're starting off part one of 3 parts around necessary losses. We've been wanting to do this topic for a while, and we have some really, really great guests coming up for the next 2 weeks. First one next week will be Beth Kavanaugh. Some light at the end. She's an amazing friend of Carrie's, hospice nurse. And oh my God, that interview was so good. And then we follow up for part 3 with Amy Pickard and Good to Go. Again, just a hoot. And that's all about advanced planning. Yeah. So these three topics have been close to our hearts, and we've been dying to do this. So we're so excited. Carrie, you're the one that really came up with this topic. So do you want to kind of explain the idea of necessary losses for our listeners?
Yes. And also a special shout out to someone you coach, and I coach sometimes, Julie Stoltz, for even like asking for this, because so we all have aging parents. We're all aging, the older you get, the more, people start talking about loss and different kinds of losses, like the empty nest syndrome and all that. So what the term I first heard from my sister, who was a psychology major, she explained it to me so beautifully, and I've heard it again. And then I actually looked it up because it occurred to me, we go through this all the time, right? And it refers to the painful experiences or changes that are an inevitable part of life, right? So these losses are necessary because they contribute to personal growth. We're all going to go through them. It contributes to self-awareness and the development of resilience. So while the term necessary losses was maybe popularized by the psychologist and author Judith Viorst in her book of the same name, it also just is a term that encompasses that broader concept, and it's applicable to all aspects of life, right? Because, if you're born, you're going to die. And
so one thing we're all doing.
If you have children, they are going to grow up and, most likely leave, and some don't. And sometimes that's also sad.
That's also a loss.
Yeah. And so, I think that this is a great topic. And I think, you and I, we get that heart squeeze all the time. And you even said once, I can't even look at those videos when they're little. Kids first day of kindergarten, all those things. So
Yeah. Well, okay. So let's start off with some examples. And loss of childhood is one of them. And it's a loss of childhood both for the person and the parent, right? And so it's growing up and everything that entails, right? You sort of lose that carefree sense of childhood and step into the responsibilities and the challenges of adulthood. It does mean letting go of the dependency on parents or guardians and learning how to navigate your life independently. And so again, it's hard on the parents as we watch, you and I talk about this all the time. Peter and Liam are the same age. Liam actually, again, this is being recorded a couple weeks before this is being released, but yesterday was the 2-year anniversary of Liam moving out. He hadn't gone to college? I guess he had, but he was going to community college. So he did not spend his first 2 years at a college where he would have had to go away. But he's been gone now 2 years, first in the Valley and now in San Diego. And then Peter moved even farther. He went to New Orleans for college. So it was hard on us, but it was also hard on them to no longer have us at easy access,
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. There's that heart squeeze that I was just mentioning about when they go off like that reminds me of when they go off to school, when they first leave home to go to maybe not even preschool, but kindergarten, because it's an all-day thing, right?
Yeah.
So just a shout out to my friends who all listen. Our kids went to this K-8 school with this just a really sweet place. It's a little outside of Portland, so a lot of acres, and this. I think I'm pretty sure she's an award. Yes, she is an award-winning poet. Naomi Shihab is also a friend of the head of school. So every single parent, their first day of kindergarten, gets this poem. Can I read it to you?
Oh my gosh, please. Am I going to cry though?
You will.
Okay.
You might. Well, you might. I know you. You will. What is supposed to happen? So when you were small, we watched you sleeping, waves of breath filling your chest. Sometimes we hid behind the wall of baby, soft cradle of baby needs. I loved carrying you between my own body and the world. Now you are sharpening pencils, entering the forest of lunchboxes, little desks. People I never saw before call out your name and you wave. This loss I feel, this shrinking as your field of roses grows and grows. Now I understand history. Now I understand my mother's ancient eyes.
Wow. Okay. So you're going to definitely have to put that up on our social media. That is amazing. It reminds me of the book I'm sure you read too, I'll Love You Forever.
Oh, yes.
Oh my God. I could never get through that book.
I know.
I mean, I could do good until the son was coming back for the mom. And then it was just, and Liam as a little kid would just like, look at me like, what on God's green earth? Why are you crying? I'm like, you just wait.
I know. I remember my kids going, that's kind of weird. I'm like, no, it's good. It's sad. It's sweet.
Please do this.
Yeah,
no, I remember thinking too, like, this will be sad, but please don't climb into bed with me.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, as you can imagine, like a bunch of parents of their little, especially their oldest, was like, yeah. So, and what's funny too is when your
that's
last
a beautiful
child,
poem. I just want to say,
yes,
that's unbelievable.
When your last child leaves the school, they do a special ceremony for those parents, and they have another poem of hers that's kind of funny that we laugh at because it's like things that ripen, time to leave, stinky cheese. It was kind of like a don't let the door hit you in the ass poem. It's so funny because even though it was beautiful, it's always kind of, that first one was so welcoming.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah. Another one, loss of relationships. Oh, dun, dun. They can change, they can end for various reasons, such as a breakup, a divorce, the passing of a loved one. Those losses are painful. They also provide opportunities for personal growth, right? And the development of new connections. So yeah, those are rough. I mean, the older we get, the more we know you'll get to the other side of them, but it's hard to watch younger people go through them and know they think it's the end of the world.
Yeah. Yes. And I mean, again, I think we referenced this earlier, but Charlotte's first breakup was surprisingly hard on me because it triggered all those memories of breakups that I'd had, and so to the point of personal growth, though, that was also something that I could look back on. I mean, and she still asks it, how did this happen? And how'd that shake out? And, so I'm able to help her through it because I've had those losses and I've survived, I'm here and I'm married and I have kids, so while it feels, catastrophic for her at this moment, there's also like, she can see eventually it's fine.
Right. And I think it's that saying that's so overused probably, but it's better to love and lose than to never love at all.
Yep.
I believe that. I think
yeah.
I learned and grew so much in all my different types of relationships, friendships too. And yeah, you kind of have to lose some or mess up some or something, to learn.
Well, you don't know what you've lost until you've had it, right? So like if you've never had it, then you don't even know you start to take things for granted. So again, I think that's part of these losses, right? Up until you have any of these losses, you realize how much you take for granted. So loss of illusions. This one's interesting. As we mature, we do have to start letting go of unrealistic expectations, idealized beliefs, the naive notions about ourselves and the world. And that can be confronting. I mean, it can be challenging to really be like, okay, that's not how I thought this was gonna go.
Oh, totally. I can think of times in my life when I was younger, especially when you're like, I didn't know grown-ups acted that way. It's like, oh, that's because at a certain, when you're young enough, you think like they all have it figured out. We've talked about that before. And then you realize like, oh yeah, everyone's kind of doing their best. But I think loss of illusion and letting go of what we imagine things to be, letting go of expectations, letting go of, I kind of think of it like when you read a book and you picture characters a certain way and then you see the movie and you don't like it. That can happen in life. I pictured it was going to be this way. It wasn't.
Yeah.
But it could have been better. And I think like kind of going back to the first one too, and we'll probably get a good, at least one, maybe a series on things around divorce and life after divorce, because I think it's there's a lot of really wonderful resources out there about, recovering from a loss. Like, nobody wants to end something necessarily, but sometimes it's the best, most healthy thing. And I think the other side of that loss brings so much richness, and sometimes the opportunity for people to give more back to themselves. So I think sometimes the loss of illusion in relationships also brings the loss of a relationship, but sometimes for the good,
Right.
So I'm not opposed to people. In fact, I finally really learned when I saw someone to say congratulations, and they were like, "What?" Everyone always says, "Oh, I'm so sorry," and I said,
Right.
"Well, I just assume that this had to be so hard that it must be the right thing for both of you. So, congratulations on getting yourself through it." And
yeah.
it was a risk of me. I think I did it with the right people, because I was just trying to bring a different energy to it than the sad panda face, because how I don't love that all the time when people look at you like, oh. So yeah, I think that loss of illusion and loss of relationships sometimes go together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So loss of identity, talk about that one.
Yeah.
Because again, as coaches, we talk about identity shifts all the time.
It's a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think throughout life, individuals will undergo all kinds of transitions and transformations that require them to either redefine their identities or actually kind of clear the shit out of the way so they can tap into it. Like, oh, this is who I am. I was in a meeting with you today where you were like, hey, like, this is who I am. There's something so comforting in knowing who we are. And sometimes we get really caught up in what we want to project our identity to be. And then if we lose it, we feel so lost, but maybe it was never that, right? So like loss of identity, I think women go through it when they change their name sometimes, or when they grow up, or when they have kids. They're like, God, I was this badass professional 2 weeks ago, and now I'm like, got spit up in my hair. So I'm familiar with that kind of loss of identity. I'm sure there's a lot that I'm not familiar with. When people retire, when when people like when their kids leave and they're just not the caretaker they had been. I know with my mom, for a long time, she was identifying as a recent widow. It's like, who am I if I'm not caring for him, right? If a caregiver loses the person they're giving care to, who am I? Mm-hmm. Right. So I think that can happen. Letting go, I think, of previous identities and embracing new ones can be a necessary loss. But I also kind of am curious what you would say about that, because it's like we are who we are, but I think we sometimes have these attachment to stories that we think is our identity. Right?
Well, you took the words right out of my mouth.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Like, you can let go of a story you've been telling about yourself. We talk all the time to our clients around the idea of our beliefs, our experiences inform our beliefs, right? So our experiences, we create a story based on what we've experienced, and that becomes our belief. And when you have a new story, even if this new story and this new belief is really fantastic, there's still some grief around, this is who I thought I was. And even if that other thing wasn't serving you, right? So your old story probably wasn't serving you, but it's still hard to let go of something that you've spent 37 years, 40 years believing about yourself,
Totally. Oh, yeah.
So, yeah.
I love what you just said, because it reminds me something I go over with my kids and my clients all the time, which is that reminder that you are not what you're experiencing.
Yeah.
So that, like what you just said, reminds me of that beautiful reminder of, I'm experiencing a loss, but like that's not who I am. Like, I'm Kari, I'm experiencing something that's hard, instead of just like, when you start to identify it, then that's who you are. And then you don't let go of it. If it's negative for a long time, then it does become who you are. But if you can step back and say, there's me and there's an experience, then it's much easier to let it kind of float by and stay who you are, which is, again, something you're beautiful at doing.
Loss of health. I mean, this one totally resonates, not with me, but with my dad for sure.
My dad too. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. I mean, I think, and my mother-in-law, but my dad, when I think about my dad, I mean, as we talked, I'm trying to think when this is landing. I think this might land this right after Father's Day pod. So if not, there's a bonus Father's Day pod coming up. But I think about him growing up. I mean, he was so meticulous about his health and his appearance and his home. And as the dementia started hitting, he wouldn't take showers. He wouldn't, he wasn't going to the dentist. He wasn't. And and it was so confounding to my sister and I, because we were like, but you've always been this. And then, we learned things about like showers feel bad on people's skins at that age, and with dementia in particular. And so we learned things that made it make sense. But in the moment, it was so hard to watch. He didn't really know it, so I guess he wasn't feeling like your dad might have felt it more than my dad did. But
hard to know. I mean, everything you've said so far sounds so similar. So, yeah.
But I'm thinking about when your dad had to have, when he started going downhill for the heart stuff.
You're right.
Like that had to be huge.
Sure. You're right. Yeah. Before the transplant, he was on oxygen, and he had been like running 11 miles 3 times a week. That was hard.
That must have been hard.
So hard. I mean, to go from feeling, like he went from being this very young retired dad, grandpa, to like he couldn't walk up steps without sitting down. That is not who we knew him to be.
Right.
So, yeah.
So it's hard to watch, and then it can be hard for the person that's going through it. And again, these losses can be difficult to accept, but it can also create a resilience and an inner strength, and a greater appreciation for life. I bet when your dad got his transplant, something shifted for him again.
Yes, definitely. It gave us more time. Definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, there's the little complications that we talked about in the other one, but yeah, for sure. And I, when I look at this, I can't help but think of Griffin, right? There is so often that, no one in this house takes for granted like a good day where there's no seizure. No one, so like the loss of normalcy around health or things you can take for granted does create a lot of, let's make the best of this. Let's go do something, or, let's celebrate this. So it does have that positive effect, because we can't guarantee it.
Yeah.
I mean, we could talk about that for a long time. Lots of health. I mean, I think that's why too, you and I are both so committed to like working at our health, because we want to be around, and that's not something I'm going to let go of easily. The thing about aging that I'm always like, I don't like loss of eyesight. That sucks. You and I were on with a much younger person earlier. We're both like this.
Yeah.
And if you're watching our video, you could see us getting really close to the screen, because he was showing us a tiny screen, and I was like, gosh, I hate that. I don't even mind the wrinkles. It's the loss of eyesight that really bugs the crap out of me.
That's so funny.
So that's obviously we're experiencing that with parent and peers. And it's also acknowledges like that while they can be painful, it's just part of it. It's just part of it. It's all part of the self-discovery and resilience building and embracing and learning that these losses can lead to like deeper understanding. I noticed with my dad, the more his health suffered, the more compassionate he was too, just with himself and others around that stuff. Like it softened.
Yeah.
So
when you reflect on loss, what comes up for you?
Yeah, I think when I reflect on loss, I definitely, like when we look back at those ones we were just covering, I think of like people I've lost. I really relate to loss of childhood. I get a little melancholy around change, right? So at the end of any time together, I get a little, like the loss of the present moment, which sounds so strange, but like any sort of connection I have. I saw Jonathan Silva. I don't know if you followed him. He does those shots of awe, or he used to. He's like a YouTuber. He talked about how it's just incredible how human nature is, that we're already grieving the loss of the moment we're in, right? Like, because everything's finite, everything's going to be over. And so your happiest moment can be your sweetest moment. Like there's so much emotion with a newborn, because this is precious. There's so much emotion. Like I don't see you very often. I'm always really like, oh, and just and because I value my relationships, I think the loss is just, it's the moment's over, but I always switch really quickly into how lucky I am that I have something that makes me sad to leave it. And so it's like that loss is like what I'm way in touch with that. Like Peter just left. He was home for a week and he left to go to Ohio, and my heart just squeezed. So, but it's because I had so much fun and I love it. So it's like flip side of the same coin. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I think the thing that's most present for me is loss of humans, right? Just because I have had a lot of loss in the last 5 years of people passing. I am a big proponent of really being present and recognizing and even saying out loud when I'm in the moment that I realize how great it is. Like, this is really fun. I'm having a great time. Like, I want to integrate it in the moment instead of looking back and being like, oh, that was so much fun that time. Like, I want to know I'm having fun when I'm having fun, it's interesting because I was looking through my diary and that's how I realized it'd been 2 years since Liam had left. And I remember thinking, well, first off, he did it really quickly. He told me he was moving on Mother's Day and was gone within a month. He was gone before his birthday, which was in June. So I didn't have a lot of time to ruminate. So I think in some ways that helped. But then I also remember thinking that day, everything went so smooth that it was just a sign to me that it was exactly when it was supposed to happen. And I felt like I had him home a whole extra year because of COVID, and he had done the first year in his bedroom,
Totally.
So there was those moments of thinking like, yes, this is exactly what's supposed to happen. And I got extra time. So I'm happy,
Yeah.
So I think for me, the one that really lands, and we're going to end with a fun song, but I think this is the moment where I want to talk about the fact that like even losing people we don't know, when David Bowie died, I was inconsolable in a way that I thought was weird.
Same. I didn't get out of bed.
My fucking problem. Yeah, no, I mean, I had to work but I remember getting up, reading the Tribune alert. Of course, backstory for people who don't maybe know, is that Bowie had just put out Black Star. It had come out on Friday of that weekend before he passed, which was his birthday. And it's a great album. And so Darren and Liam and Charlotte and I, we bought it that night on vinyl, listened to it all weekend long. And we were all of just, well, Darren and I in particular, the kids were a little bit young, we're just like, he's back to form and we love this album and oh my God. And so to wake up that Monday morning and he had died, I remember walking into the bedroom, Darren was still sleeping, hyperventilating, crying. Like it hit me so hard. And I remember thinking at the time, this is weird. Why am I feeling this? And it was a combination of just Bowie had been so integral in our lives, but also he was my mom's age. And I just remember having this real intuitive hit of like, this is the beginning of the end, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I was just before we recorded, I found a meme that said, I don't want to say Bowie held the threads of the universe together, but gestures wildly around everything that's happened since he died. I was like,
oh God, we have to post that.
I will definitely post it.
Oh my gosh. I mean, this actually, as you're saying it goes under loss of childhood because we started, I mean, I felt like I had a weird response. There's a woman I know in town here who had such a big response. She created a whole movement around it. The Low Bar Chorale, the people get together once a month and they sing, they'll pick a genre of it. Like it started around Bowie and singing all his songs like every week when they got together. So a lot of people our age responded that way. I think he had that kind of effect. I felt that way about Prince as well. And then as it kept happening, Tom Petty, George Michael and Christmas, all those things, like it just started to feel like everyone who was so young is now gone. I agree. It's that losing your idols really marks time. Yeah.
And so then it's like
goes into loss of time, right?
Loss of time. And you and I, again, as coaches, we're always talking about what's the positive intention or what's the positive gain behind all of this. And I guess if I think about, again, if my biggest one is sort of loss of people, it is recognizing that time is finite, and I think my gain, especially around my parents passing, was that it took away a sense of fear that I had around death, because I realized I survived it. My fear around death had always been what the people I left behind would be feeling. That always made me sad when I thought about dying. And I now know that they will be fine.
Yeah.
Because I'm fine.
And that's why I really hope people listen into the next two, because I think there's just so much levity and light to addressing the things that people, like, traditionally in this culture, in our Western culture, we don't talk about. Eastern culture is so beautiful about how they sit with, or, you know, in Jewish culture, they sit Shiva, and how they really prepare for it and sit with it. And I love this conversation about, we survive it in honor, in celebration.
Yeah.
And I think it's beautiful. I was getting choked up listening to you, but I also think this is the Venn diagram of so many of our topics, which is like time and no fucks and, you know, like what matters to us. Right. And I think that's the positive, is when you can survive letting yourself grieve.
Yeah.
You know, I had a really wise friend tell me, who also has a special needs kid. Like, sometimes you just have to have a grief moment when you can let yourself do that. And I told you about that recently. Oh my gosh. It's everything. It really opens up room, like that saying that, you know, grief will carve out a space that will leave that much more room for joy to fill it up.
Yeah.
And I think that's when you let yourself embrace loss and understand that things are temporary, you really, really will allow yourself to access joy more readily, because you're not worried about losing, because you know it's all temporary.
Yeah. So I want to throw another plug in right now. If you thought, when I said at the beginning, we're going to be talking to a hospice nurse and advanced planning, and you thought, well, I'll just skip those 2 pods, do not. Because first of all, Amy Pickard is fucking hilarious.
She's the funniest person I've ever met. Yes.
That pod is so funny. And you will walk away from listening to her in particular and find humor in death. And then your friend Beth, I mean, again, also funny. And it was just such a lovely conversation. So highly recommend that you listen to the next 2 pods for sure.
Both brilliant.
Do you want to talk about tips on embracing loss?
Yeah, I think it's important, right? Like, embracing loss is part of life.
Yeah.
So I think, like, we came up with just a couple tips, because we like to do that. These are our own tips that we would have for each other, right? And for sure. I think the first one is acknowledge your feelings. Like, give yourself permission to feel. It's kind of what I was just saying, and express your emotions surrounding the loss. Allow yourself to grieve, whether it's sadness, anger, confusion, depending on the type of loss. Like, what just happened? You know, recognizing, accepting your emotions is an essential step in the healing process. If you're at your child's graduation, don't judge yourself for feeling sad, even though it's supposed to be happy. It's all the things. Moving. We didn't talk about that. That is actually listed as one of the biggest stressful moments. And
I've done it twice. I know.
And I think we forget that, like, it deserves its own feelings. So allowing the feelings to be part of it will really short circuit the journey you're going to go through.
Yeah. And then as you're going through that, again, it probably depends on the kind of loss, but seeking support. You know, hopefully you have friends that are reaching out and giving support unasked, but many people don't know how to handle loss. And it is one of the things we talk about in the next 2 pods. But so really recognizing that you reaching out for support and reaching out for help is a gift to yourself, but also a gift to the people you're asking. So, you know, find someone who's just willing to listen. And even ask for that kind of, I don't need you to tell me what to do. I don't need any advice. I just need to download this with you, or I just need you to witness, or I just need you to sit here with me. But sharing your feelings and experiences with lots of different people will give you lots of different perspectives, and that can be incredibly helpful.
That is so true. Oh, God, where would I be without you and other people who support me? Yeah. I think that the next one is practice self-care. Those people who support you will probably also make sure you do this, but it's so important. You can't skip this. I've tried. I've seen other people try. I have a friend going through this right now with a parent in hospice, and it's like, you can't put that off. It is not the loving thing for the person that you're caring for. Right. You can't put off self-care in any type of loss, right? You really got to check in and, you know, just be aware, be mature and aware that physically and emotionally and mentally, you might need something. You just might need a breath. You might need to step out. You might need a day to yourself. Exercise, spending time in nature, meditation, journaling, engaging in hobbies that nourish your soul. What if like painting or a cooking class or just cooking for some people is a chore. Maybe for someone else, it's nourishing. For me, it would be.
Yeah, it'd be a chore for me. I like people to just send me food. Reflect on the meaning of the loss, and when I say reflect on the meaning, it's not about making meaning about you. If the loss, especially when you're thinking about loss of a relationship, if it was a divorce or a breakup of some sort or an estrangement, when you reflect on it, don't make it mean something about you, but maybe reflect on, it could be the good times. If it's a passing of someone, it could be, what went well, what would I like to see more of the next time, if it's a relationship type of thing. But again, it can help you grab on to something that will move you forward and not leave you languishing in that loss, for sure.
Oh, I like that. Because when I go back to like your child starting kindergarten, or just something shifting in where you don't feel as needed or you don't know your role anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. Reflect on the meaning without judging yourself. What meaning were you making? What meaning can you create? Like, what if that's a perfect opportunity for a reframe? Like,
yeah.
What is this opening up for me? What is this loss making room for? I love that. Which goes into this, allow yourself time and space, because that takes time. We always want it to go faster, but it goes how it goes.
Yep.
And I think everyone's journey is different. I think if you're patient with yourself and allow the healing process to unfold, I think you're gonna be able to do those other 4 things we've already talked about. So if you grant yourself space, I think you're gonna have time to adjust. And I think that's probably it. What we resist persists, right? So if you resist this, like, oh, I hate this, like you're just going to stay there. And if you just let it be, what's possible?
And the next one might feel a little cliche, the idea of practicing gratitude. But the reality of it is, when you can sit in a space of gratitude, and maybe not every day that's possible. Again, going back to feeling the feelings, there could be a day where you're just like, fuck this shit. Like, I can't even understand why this is happening to me. Totally valid, totally fair. You are allowed to have those feelings. But I think a great stop measure when you want to climb out of that is to say, and what's going well? What am I happy about? What am I grateful for? I've said this several times to many people, but for me, one of my gratitudes around my mom passing was that she didn't have to go through COVID. It would not, had she survived, she would have been high risk, and she still would have been by herself. And Amy and I would have suffered, and she would have suffered with the idea that here is our mom who is ill and we can't get to her because we can't be around somebody who's got during COVID. So I got there really quickly, and it helped immensely to be like, thank God she's not going through this bullshit.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's a really good one. I often ask you too, like I'll say, like, am I just like, am I having that toxic gratitude thing, or am I just really like, because I think there's both kinds. I think gratitude is powerful. It is such an important thing, as long as you don't skip the other steps.
Right.
I think there's times, it's the weirdest thing. You probably hear me do it, but there's times in the middle of some hard stuff where I feel really lucky. I feel so lucky for the people in my life in the hardest moments. And that just comes. I allow it.
Right.
And I
it's
think
not
that's
forcing it. There's where the toxic,
right.
I think, comes. When the toxic is too blessed to be stressed. That one drives me fucking crazy. Hashtag too blessed to be stressed. No, but if you allow, so again, it goes back to the feel your feelings. If you're in deep in grief and all of a sudden you're feeling grateful, there might be a part of your brain that goes, oh, are you done? Or how dare you feel that way? All feelings are valid, so don't force it. That's where the toxicness comes in.
Yeah.
When it comes, allow it.
Right. And toxic. Yeah, that's exactly it. At least that's where it comes in when someone else says to you, at least you're not da 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 da. Like, come on.
Yep.
There's also seek professional help. There is professional help. There are therapists, there are grief coaches, counselors. There's a lot of types of
I know coaches that focus on grief, and it's not just grief like death. It's grief of when you go through any kind of loss.
Any loss of transition. And the thing we didn't talk about here too, which is, like women going through menopause. Like that's a huge transition. And like, I guess some
menopause coaches
miss their periods. I don't know. Yeah, we know menopause coaches. There's, I don't, but
I don't think that's the thing they miss, but okay.
I don't know if they do. I don't, but yeah, any transformation or transition involves a little bit, you got to let go of something to step into something new. And I think like, don't try to go through that alone. If you find yourself struggling, give yourself permission to know that like, you don't have to do it alone. There are a lot of ways to get support.
And I also say this now, I mean, this is going to sound like a weird thing to say, but honestly, DM us through the Facebook page. If you need some support, we know a bazillion resources that we can direct you to. So
we sure do.
Message us through the Facebook page or the Instagram page. We do have an email. We'll be talking about that in the next couple of pods, but if you need help, please let Kari and I know, because we can direct you up to tons of resources. And the reality of it is, loss is individualistic. And it's weird and it's not linear. And so just being able to embrace this, there's no right or wrong way to navigate it. Just be with yourself, be present around it and let it flow. And you will move through it much faster, like you just said, than trying to resist it.
Yeah. I mean, I love that. Connection is the immediate way to feel better around anything you're going through around this. Connection.
Yep.
Truly.
Yep.
There's so many great resources. I know that like on Facebook, there's, and not just Facebook, they have their website, Grown and Flown has been such a great resource for parents of kids who have flown the coop.
Yes.
That's just one.
A friend of mine just recently tied me into them. And I think
we got mentioned there.
We did get mentioned really early on. Thank you to Catherine for putting us out there. It's that's a great one. So I feel better.
I do too. I feel better.
Did that feel authentic? No, I mean, I think again, we've been so excited about these 3 episodes. It's our first sort of like trifecta of episodes. We've got a few more of these in the future, but thinking about loss is a heart squeeze. There's no getting around that.
I agree. I think it's another great topic that supports giving less fucks. So you can be more present for life, right? And it's not saying you don't care about the loss or the grief. It's about letting yourself, save your energy for the things you want to save it for.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So you came up with a couple of great songs. Actually, as we were sitting here, I thought of another amazing song around loss. But
what's that?
Nope, I'm not going to say it, because here's what we're going to do. We will add these, like we did around the music and laughter one. We'll add some of these songs out throughout the week on our Instagram page and our Facebook page, because we actually do, going back to Bowie and Prince and all of the above, we came up with the perfect, and I shouldn't say we, because Kari did this. Kari came up with the perfect idea, because we want to pay respect to literally a woman who absolutely, I mean, goddamn, she went through some shit.
She sure did.
She came out the other side given no fucks left to give. And so would you like to do our song this week?
Yes, because in the time this is being recorded, we are mourning the loss of a legend, Tina Turner, the queen herself. And so there's no better song to encapsulate, what we love about her and what we miss about her. And it's simply the best. So the lyrics are, each time you leave me, I start losing control. You're walking away with my heart and my soul. I can feel you even when I'm alone. Oh, baby, don't let go. Oh, you're the best, better than all the rest, better than anyone I've ever met.
Again, I literally have chills right now.
I know.
And I do think one of the things we'll have to put up this week then is the lip sync by David Rose.
I was just going to say that. You just read my mind. How does that keep happening?
Go up.
Every time we record at the end, you say something that makes me go, I was just going to say that. That's the best.
That's why we're partners.
I know. It's so good when he does that lip sync. I think there's so many genres she found her way into. Like there's just no genre that.
But that was really a resurgence for her when they brought that in.
True.
And Yeah, the story around both of them, both the actors drinking beforehand, they had a whole bottle of champagne before they recorded it because they were nervous.
So good. Because how do you pay homage to that? I know, I think lesser, not as cool as those two, but also very cool and funny is John Krasinski and Paul Rudd also doing lip syncs to her songs.
Oh my God.
So maybe we'll have to share those two. They're so good.
We got lots to share this week. Better start making notes of all of our posts we're going to make.
I am. That's why I'm clicking over here.
Yeah. Well, again, this is only the beginning. We have 2 more great episodes around necessary losses. Next week will be part 2 with Kari's brilliant friend, Beth Kavanaugh. And then, of course, part 3 with my brilliant friend, Amy Pickard. And I am so excited for you guys to meet both of them.
Yay. You will not want to miss these.
No. But as always, thank you so much for listening. And if necessary losses landed for you, please share this with someone you know that could use it and tell them to hit like, because that way they'll get the next 2.
Oh, I love it. Yes. Thanks for being here. This was so great. Can't wait.
Talk to you guys next week.
So long.
Bye.